Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Day of the Dead, episode 3. So, going into this episode, immediately my thought process is like, man, these people are like, this is moron town. Uh, these people have got to be the dumbest batch of people that will be placed into a zombie invasion that I have ever seen in my life. And I've seen some things, I've heard some stuff. And here is also the stupidest thing with this show. So, really, I could make the consensus in episode 2 that the one thing that I did not like, and I mean heavily disliked, compared to any other part of the last episode, I was thinking, oh, I hope that they don't go back to that and have it be another carrying of an episode, which of course they do. Plus, now in my thought process, considering we're still seemingly like getting to the real breaking point of zombie apocalypse, like it is starting to technically unravel, but it still feels like we're still at day zero here. Because here's the thing, like the opening sequence of this show will tell you exactly who is to be left alive during this show. So you can immediately tell certain people are to have been dead at this point. And so now you're basically just going like, oh, okay, well, obviously this person's going to be dead, so why should I invest in them? This person is obviously going to be dead, so is it. So, like, really the only person that we should really just have to care about forcibly is Pamela, the mayor. And I'm like, why? Why are we to attach ourselves to this character for seemingly 2 episodes now, and they're to be focused in seemingly 2 episodes? Because none of the story is all that good, with the exclusion of Fisher, which Fisher doesn't even have a good outing in this episode. Because he is kind of attached to Lauren and Cam, which aren't really delivering much of a good episode here. And neither is either Luke or Trent. Is it Trent? Does it matter? No. They're irrelevant characters. McDermott is an irrelevant character. We have this other girl called Logan. So the only thing that's actually a viable story in this whole entire episode is the thing that I hated about last episode. Because we again have the love triangle going on where we have to give up more information that is going to be so valid to a zombie apocalypse, as well as there not really being seemingly enough of that sweet, delicious zombie apocalypse in this episode for my liking. I want a whole entire episode of zombie apocalypse, not just little clips here and there. Like, this still is not good enough. I am still like underwhelmed and unimpressed, to the point of just like, man, they should have just started this off with the zombie apocalypse and ran with it instead of going into like, yeah, we really need to get some pre-set up things. I'm like, I'm sorry, anything of this show that's probably going to be past October is going to possibly be irrelevant. Because, like, some people are probably going to go and start watching other things and completely forget about this show. So this show needs to grab people and not let go, instead of just making it seem more enticing to see any number of 1,200 other zombie shows that are just, from start to finish, a great, fun, interesting ride. I would much rather be watching Sweet Home instead of this show. I want to go to Netflix and watch Sweet Home. That show is so interesting. And I'm just like, man, I wish that show was heavily popular right now, because I would just be like, heck yeah, like I like this show anyways. Because I only watched the pilot episode and I really wanted to also review the second episode, but like it just didn't catch on. So I'm just like, well, okay, because I kind of caught it too late in the game. But still, uh, I would rather watch Reality Z, Sweet Home, especially Sweet Home. Sweet Home was really good. Uh, go into any Walking Dead thing, just go and just rewatch old season one episodes and just kind of just like, yeah, this is fun. Like, just do it as a freaking marathon, or yes, because I think a lot of people are going through like Dawn of the Deads or something like that really right now instead of going into this show, because anything could be better than this. That's the sad, horrifying truth. So, with that said, teeing it up, what is this show really about? Well, if it's not focused on Paula and or the mayor and her seemingly secret that they are to unfold or unravel in this episode, which I'm like, who freaking cares? Who cares about her secret? This secret makes no difference when we don't even know if any of these people are going to make it past XYZ point. So who gives a what this secret is now? We now have zombie invasion going on, but like they don't give a like, no, hey man, let's just put on some side story that won't really last past X amount of minutes because someone's probably going to die. Do we have monkeys writing the show? Is there just some artificial life form that's writing the show and just putting something out? Is there actually a human being behind the wheel of this thing? Good God. And plus also, we have the worst hospital that I think I have ever seen in my life. That we have McDermott, who is to have awakened, to have some things going on with him. And we also have this woman named Logan, who is basically, in the visual of which that we see her in the beginning of this episode, is the metaphor basically for the entire episode of basically this show giving people the finger because they're like, hey man, we're not going to even try to do a good zombie show. We're just going to put all this garbage out and stretch for time. Like, this show was such an absurd stretch for time. It's like, and plus also we have moronish like people that we're having to invest in. I'm sorry, I don't want to invest in morons. Like, we have reasonably Trent, who I am just begging whoever is to write this show to immediately kill this person off, as well, like, because, and plus, the beginning intro scene of this show tells you who's going to be alive, so I'm basically banking on my dream coming true, and so, but that also is to probably tell me I'm kind of a little concerned about Fisher's fate, because I actually like him compared to everyone else. If anything, I swear to God, they better not kill off Blackwood. Have this person be on this show for the whole entire thing, because I think I have to be invested in Blackwood so much more so than anyone else, just because, one, she's an attractive woman, two, she's an attractive woman, and three, because I really can't invest in anybody else, because they are just be like, I'm grasping at straws to eventually try and come up with some kind of rational reason for investing in anybody at this point. And so I would have to possibly invest in Blackwood because she was not in the promo or the opening sequence of the first episode. So I have to root for her to stay alive because everyone else is like, Oh, so so obviously Cam is going to be alive through this episode. Luke is going to be alive past this point, even though it seemed like he was eventually having his life possibly in the balance, and so on and so forth. So things were going down in this stretch of whatever. Basically, all the dialogue that is to happen in this episode, or just this show in general, seems meaningless. The only real interesting thing, still within 3 episodes, has to be that Fisher stuff with that whole wedding thing, which, again, is irrelevant because zombie apocalypse. Nothing is like basically all the stuff that they like had built with all these characters are 100% meaningless. And so I don't get why the writers just don't understand that. Like, I don't get it. Why are they still going on to slowly build this up? By the time that there's actually a real legitimate zombie apocalypse interesting story, this show will probably end, or more than likely will get canceled for whatever reason, because people are just not interested. So, with that said, let's go out of our way to just double five this up, because let's get into spoiler territory. Because spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil this movie, or this episode. So, I'm going to go in a roundabout way, because I've just kind of given up just trying to, like, perfectly do this episode. I'm just going to pick certain characters and say what's going on in this episode for them, or just kind of deem certain things to be the most important, besides what this show deems to be the most important, which is to continue the story on with the mayor. Because why? This character is the most annoying character in the entire freaking show, and now we get a double dose of her in this freaking episode. Kill this character off, please. The mayor. I can't deal with the love triangle thing. I can't deal with this freaking mayor character. I'm sorry. Like, for Miranda Friggin, I'm sorry that you are to have a character that I don't like. But it's not your fault. Like, these characters are just so much a pain in the freaking head, butt, batukus, everything. In body form. Just, we have town filled with morons. So let's go into it. Let's talk about one moronic thing. So let's go and focus on McDermott at first. So we end up having McDermott waking up into the hospital, who all of a sudden is to have lost some finger of his. And so evidently they just sewed his like missing finger up. And so McDermott all of a sudden is to be pressing on the missing finger part of his hand to all of a sudden eventually have discovered a tooth, because these doctors are the worst possible doctors in this world. So even the doctors are morons, and they can't even like have found a tooth in someone's hand, because evidently they didn't x-ray it or anything like that after the fact, or even checked to make sure that hey guys, if you wanted to just leave like a towelette in this guy's finger, or like, hey, if you want to just like continue to have done a horrible job at this, go right ahead. But McDermott all of a sudden is to kind of squeeze his finger to pull out a tooth, and he's like, is this a tooth? Yes, it's the tooth. It's all the tooth. Absolutely, understandably the tooth. So anyways, so we have Logan, who is to go and inspect McDermott's other finger where he has his wedding ring. And so I'm like, wait a minute, so Logan was to have finger, but they didn't reattach it to McDermott's hand? So So what? Could they have not have reattached finger to hand? No? I'm sorry, but like there's some illogic being spewed out here where I'm just immediately just like, what? Like they couldn't have bothered to reattach finger into McDermott's hand? Would the finger not have worked to reattach to McDermott's hand? Was there some kind of infection going on with McDermott's finger that was to eventually have led to them not to reattach finger to hand? Was it like World War Z, where eventually, since that finger was technically infected, they had to basically like chop it off and then just be like, yeah, we can't reattach because it's an infected thing? Then I could probably justify that, but still, woman has finger and hand, and like, shouldn't she have just gotten rid of this finger? But no, she's like inspecting the finger. She's like poking and prodding it with certain devices. They're just like, finger. And then the finger is starting to move by itself. And she's like, oh my god, finger is moving. I'm like, wow, finger is moving. Okay, sure. So Logan is to eventually go on with some police or some person that's working alongside her, because it doesn't say in this IMDb, to eventually go and check out that scarecrow zombie that was underneath the rocks. And so Logan had seen a finger moving around. So you would think Logan would just be like, you know what? I'm just going to be uberly cautious when it comes down to seemingly a dead item that is probably not dead. But hey, hopefully my other police officer or guy that I'm working with has that same precaution and doesn't get chewed up and eaten up by reasonably a scarecrow-like zombie-esh-like thing. But oh no, he gets eaten and bitten and whatever. Oh, good for him. So, now that that's out of the way, let's go and focus on anything else. Let's go with Luke and Trent, where, like, I'm just like, God, this whole stupid party keg story is really weighing thin. Like, if this isn't the perfect example of just stretching out a show, this story is it. So, because these guys are seemingly completely oblivious of the whole zombie zombie apocalypse thing, so they're just still moaning and groaning about things, where really Trent is moaning and groaning because of his sweet, delicious shoes that are to go into the water because he's trying to desperately go for this keg. And so then Trent is eventually dragged this keg out of the water, which we rarely have it where like Luke is kind of dangling Trent into the water to try to get this keg. And I'm like, dude, it's either you want alcohol or you want to take a swim. Which one do you want to do, buddy? Like, if you want the alcohol, like, but, like, yeah, so he trips in the water, and then he decides to use the stick in a different way to drag the keg out anyways. And I'm like, why couldn't they have done that first? Why couldn't he have figured out how to have done that first? Like, they're just eating up time here. So, they drag the keg out, and so now they're kind of still like waiting on this party. It's like, hey man, when is this party eventually going to happen? Like, because like they have it where Trent's kind of complaining that like this is senior skip day, and the only thing that they actually were to accomplish was to go and mess with Trent by that graveyard, and that's all they could have really accomplished. And so they're like, yeah. And all other kind of boring Ash-like story that Luke and Trent have to continue to talk about and whatever. Like, boo-hoo for these characters. But really at the tail end of the show, there is to finally be that zombie that is taking forever to get out of the water. Conveniently, by the end of this episode, that zombie is to finally just be like, man, you know what? Like, I'm getting a little pruny. So how about I just start walking out of this water and just going ahead and trying to go after Luke, but Luke isn't going to die because opening scene of pilot episode will tell you he's not going to die. So now let's go on to eventually go and talk about Blackwood. So Blackwood is to be seemingly followed by Rhodes. And so Blackwood is to, of course, be spotted by Rhodes. And so now, like, Blackwood is running in the woods and Rhodes is coming after her with some kind of gun. And so really Blackwood's is to have this tactic of getting her like shoelaces or whatever together and having this weird kind of tripwire, which obviously anybody could possibly see. If I see like a shoelace kind of thing trap, I'm gonna like, oh yeah, I'm gonna smack right into that because it's like during the middle of the day. And this is an obvious tripwire thing that would probably be seen by anybody. When Rhodes is to touch this tripwire, like, it's obvious that he could have actually seen this because of how really thick it is compared to his fingers. And I'm just like, how do you trip on that? How do you smack right into that? Like, I guess you could say that he rushed and he's also a moron. But, like, so... Because everyone in this town is. I'm not just picking out one person. I'm saying we have town of not so intelligent people, and that comes obvious within this episode or anything that is to happen beforehand. So Rhodes is smack into this line, and so now Blackwood is to eventually go off and eventually find her own gun with her own bullets. And then she is to just kind of wander off her own way. Because Rhodes, when eventually he gets hit with this wire, he is to basically just tell Blackwood, because he didn't actually see Blackwood at the end of this rope. Because she was like pulling it with her own strength. I'm like, I'm sorry, how could a person be holding on to this rope and this guy smack into it? And like, this woman has to be absurdly strong to like be able to like hold this thing so tightly. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, man, Blackwood has to be the most strongest person. Not saying woman, man, whatever. Blackwood has to be the strongest person on this show. And so I hope she has superhuman strength so that way she can go and just take a zombie's leg and smash it up against the wall because she has superhuman powers that I honestly would not believe a person is to be able to hold this tripwire for this guy to smack into it and fall over. But Rhodes is to go on and say, like, well, hey, Blackwood, like, yeah, you can, like, you got me, you bested me kind of thing. Like, so, if you're gonna go out, if you're gonna run off, like, keep your mouth shut. Because I'm sure Blackwood is around this area, because she is just waiting at the end of a tripwire to hear Rhodes say all of this. So pushing on. Now, forcibly, I think we're gonna have to end with the Cam Fisher Lauren story. I guess we'll have to wrap it up with that. So let's get into that. So let's go with the Paula, Trey, and Nicole story. Oh, Mrs. French is also with Lauren, Cam, and Fisher. You know, the old lady that ended up having that horrible diagnosis of lung cancer that we had to absurdly care about, but then eventually I guess there is technically a decent payoff for this character that it's like, oh, okay, well, like, it seems that the only person that is to be able to easily take down some zombies is an elderly woman, an attractive elderly woman. Give me some of that. I don't care. This show is weird. This show sucks. So it does. Like what eventually happens. Like I could say all the jokes that I want at some point, because eventually, if you saw this episode, you'll eventually understand what I mean. But we'll get to that. We'll finish that to the end. So now Paula, Trey, and Nicole are kind of roaming through this this place. I don't know if it's an old folks' home, if it's a hospital. What even is this place anymore? Like, supposedly it was like a voters' ballot, like valid place. It was a place where people could vote. What the heck is this place anymore? It seems like it's like a hodgepodge of a number of things that they just compiled together because they didn't know what to do. So, I guess it's an old folks' home, but then where is also, like, it feels also like a hospital. I'm so confused. So, let's make this irrelevant. So, Paula is to just be walking with Trent and Nicole, or Trey and Nicole. God, I wish Trey was dead. So, Paula is to talk, or Nicole is to talk to Paula, and so Nicole is like, well, you have to tell me that secret, because basically I'm going to have to do damage control if this secret actually gets out. Zombie apocalypse, but dark, deep down secret that could cost, I'm sure, Paula her election, right? Yeah, like, this is such a horrible secret that Paula has that it's just gonna just derail her whole campaign. Like, she might as well just not even try to be a mayor at this point, because this whole thing is just gonna derail all. It's just gonna be horrifying, the secret. So Nicole is like, well, what's the secret? You might as well tell me, some rando that is probably gonna be blabbing to anybody to get a big fat payout out of this. And so Paula ends up telling Nicole, well, you know Luke, the Luke kid that I have? Yeah, Trey may not be his father. And Nicole is like, what? Like, oh, like, I was just like, man, if the bass wasn't going to be busy dropping, like, man, I would have been like, drop the bass right now. And just like, wow, 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 wow. With this secret. Wow, that was a huge, massive thing that feels so important that we had to be just clickbaited into waiting to just figure out what the secret was, to have just realized in the following episode that this secret was completely irrelevant. So, we eventually are to walk on to all of a sudden have them go back to where patient zero is, or the old guy that they, or the guy that they had to leave in the wheelchair from the last episode. They went and gone back to go and try to get to the body, finding out that this guy is to now be a zombie and had eaten all the other elderly. And so like, oh crap. So eventually they try to take this thing down, and then they are to eventually run off. We eventually have at some point where Trey is to eventually, it's either Trey or Nicole are to eventually go and take the clip out of the gun, and so Paula, who is to now have this gun at the ready, because eventually they're wanting to try to take the bullets out of this girl's hand, because eventually Paula could just lose her freaking mind, I guess, at any point. So all of a sudden we eventually have Zombie, who is still trying to find Paula, Trey, and Nicole. And so eventually this zombie goes and finds Nicole and bites her neck. Paula doesn't have any bullets in her gun. And here's the stupid thing. They took out the clip from the gun. Was there not one bullet in the chamber? No? I guess not. So Paula ends up trying to shoot the gun to have none of these things called bullets come out. And I was just wanting to viciously so badly just to be like Bruce Willis from Die Hard, like, oh, no bullets! And so all of a sudden Nicole is getting viciously ripped apart by this zombie. And here's the thing. This zombie is to appear behind Nicole and tear her apart via the neck, and then she is to bleed out. And so we have Trey, who is to not even try to just try to like put pressure on this wound or anything. Trey is just to watch Nicole just being ripped and torn apart by the zombie, as if he has no real rational wanting to help this girl at all, because he's like, hey, I have another woman off to the side here. Because we have a point where Trey and Nicole are talking, and Nicole is like, well, hey, you can still leave her for me, kind of thing. And Trey is just like, but like she's the but she's the mother of my child. And Nicole should have been like right there, well, like that kid isn't even yours. So yeah, Trey, you can leave at any time. Like, because basically, if you're already knocking boots with some other woman, you're basically thinking that you're gonna leave the station with this train, if you know what I mean. But like Trey weirdly is just like, so in other words, Nicole was just to be a person that he was to have fun with, but he was going to always stick with his wife. Which, if I were to have been Nicole, I would have been like, well, you know what? Like, I'm just going to leave and go on my own way, because I feel like if I'm going to stay with you people, because you people aren't the brightest bulbs in the tool shed, I'm going to frickin' get out of here, live, and not be weirdly killed off because I stuck with you people during a zombie apocalypse. So, but Nicole's death is to just be like, well, thank God this love triangle is over. Could we eventually also kill Trey and eventually just have the one Paula girl to deal with? But if anything, also, Paula won't have anyone to talk to, so she'll just be running around this whole hospital shooting zombies with no bullets in her gun. So here's the icing on top of this cake here. So if we aren't kind of just happy that this love triangle is over, all of a sudden we on top of this end up having Trey, who is to mourn over Nicole's death. And Paula's like, why are you mourning over her death? Like, And so Trey is like, well, she's like family. Like, she's been with us for so long. And Paula's like, I think for her it's like, just another dead person. Whatever. And I'm like, what? Like, you would have thought, like, every, like, dead body would have piled up. She would have just been like, man, like, this sucks that happened. But, like, Paula doesn't even care. And double downing on top of that, Paula blames Trey, of course, because he's a man that has to watch over Paula's bullets that are coming into her gun. Paula is to blame Trey for not having bullets in her gun, and Paula is to claim that she would have been able to save Nicole if there were bullets into her gun. Here's the thing, Paula. Check how many bullets are in your gun, Attach that gun completely to your body 24/7. Super glue it to your hand. Frickin' always make sure per second to second you have enough bullets to kill zombies. because there's going to be a lot of them that is going to happen. Because evidently, Trey and Paula are to eventually go into the front of this place where all these people are protesting, and they are getting freaking torn apart by zombies. And so we can obviously say by the guns of which that Paula is to have in the opening scene in this show, that eventually she's going to have to go and find other guns somewhere. So maybe she's eventually going to have to take a detour to a gun store to get more weapons, because it seems like the guns she has in the opening scene aren't the guns that eventually she has now. So she must find guns somewhere. So, as well as her amendment right that she ended up having to say in the pilot episode. So, all of a sudden, so the zombie that killed Nicole still isn't dead. So, eventually the zombie ends up going after both Paula and Trey again, to where Paula is to now have to defend Trey, and I'm like, please Trey die, please Trey die, please Trey die. But we have Paula who is to go and stab, who is to take this, like, American flag, which I'm like, of course. Like, so because she's the mayor, so she's a politician, so she has to use this flag to go and, like, stab this zombie. And so the zombie is stabbed in the chest, which I'm just like, couldn't you have found another weapon? Head, buddy, head. But I guess really when looking at it, these zombies are the undefeatable zombies, so there is no way that they could have really gone and taken this thing out regardless. But so after the zombie is on this flagpole just kind of hanging out, now both Trey and Paula are to kind of see the chaos that is to be going with these protesters being attacked by these zombies. And so Trey is to have the Einstein-like line of basically saying, what are those things? What is that? The thing that we were just, like, killing? I don't know. I've never seen a zombie movie in my life. There's like 3 million of them. Check one of them out. Just, I give up. But we still have story left. So now Trey is to go and tell Paula that, like, oh my god, like, Luke is out on this, is at this party, and so we now have to go and find him. And Paula is just like, well, why isn't that Luke didn't tell me that he was going to this party? And Trey is like, well, Luke talks to me. Luke speaks to me. He doesn't speak to you, because you'll just judge the crap out of him. And so Paula is just like, well, but so I'm mayor, so I need to do some mayor stuff now. I need to figure out how to mayor-wise handle this situation. So we need to split up because I'm mayor, and so I need to, like, figure the political spectrum of things out. So, like, I'm assuming Paula is to head to her offices to eventually call the National Guard or something to deal with this whole thing. I don't know. But now let's get to forcibly Cam and Lauren and now Fisher. So, because that's how we start off this story. So, Lauren and Cam is to be in this hearse driving off. And so Lauren is to say it's like, oh god, like, because they ran over Fisher in the last episode. And so Lauren is like, oh man, I don't want to go to jail again. I'm like, I'm sorry, zombie apocalypse and you're worried about going to jail? Like, man, I would just be welcoming going to jail if this was a zombie apocalypse. Like, didn't you see the later seasons of The Walking Dead? Like, a prison place is, like, more fortified than anywhere else. Lauren is supposedly still on parole, mind you. So I guess that, like, she's just so worried about any little fart that she ends up doing that is to eventually be found out about, that she might go back to prison for whatever thing. And it's like, I'm sorry, I think, like, anything that is to happen right now is to just completely be like, there is no rule, there is no law, there is no nothing, because zombie apocalypse. So all of a sudden Fisher is to wake up with a body next to him, and he's like, oh my god, why is there a body next to me? 'Cause zombie apocalypse? 'Cause you went into a car that's a hearse. What do you think? You're in a car that's a hearse. So, really, the more important thing that Fisher is to realize that Lauren is to have this seemingly bite mark that he is to have to deal with now. And so we also have Cam at one point trying to call his father, trying to get a hold of him, but he just kind of leaves a message. It's like, hey, where are you at? It's like, you're in a hospital somewhere getting a tooth out of your finger, but hey, like, let me know, like, what's going on. You're probably a zombie, because eventually you'll end that way, because opening scene of pilot. Here's the goofy thing. So, like, this is going to take forever for McDormand to eventually turn into a zombie. And so, obviously, how is McDormand going to go from hospital to eventually finding these, like, mechanic jump coat or whatever mechanic clothes? And also, why isn't McDormand a zombie yet? Like, did they just kind of get him in perfect timing? I don't know. I guess I don't know. I don't know how zombie turning works, because it seems like Lauren hasn't turned into a zombie yet. So we end up getting World War Z, where, like, supposedly with either in 10 minutes or seemingly quite a few seconds, certain people turn into zombies, but not in this world. So Fisher is to take Lauren to eventually deal with her infection, and all of a sudden they end up bumping into Mrs. French, who was to have had Fisher told her diagnosis of lung cancer. And so all of a sudden Fisher is trying to work on Lauren and sees Mrs. French like, hey, like, what are you doing here? Like, high five, old lady. You're still alive. I'm taking some fun with here because this show. So Mrs. French is just like, well, hey, like I'm now on this oxygen tank because I decided to go and puff up, take a little bit of a smoke, and I probably should not have. And so now I'm on an oxygen tank because I made a poor decision. I'm like, this girl is basically going to die anyways. She's already made that consensus that she's going to possibly die in 6 months. So she's already just like, well, hey, man, I can do whatever I want. I can eat steak. I can eat some Sour Patch, whatever stuff. Sour Punch, Sour Patch, candies, whatever. Like, I can eat all kinds of candy, and I don't have to double check about about if there's going to be possible things wrong with them or goofy things that I may not trust during Halloween, because I'm going to die in 6 months. So, so all of a sudden, eventually what is to kind of come out of this is that we eventually are to have zombies start to kind of come into this hospital. And so all these guys have to kind of skedaddle to make their way out of this hospital. And so basically we have Fisher with bizarrish bedpans who he's clinging, and they're just kind of doing things that are to make noises for all these zombies to eventually follow them, to eventually, I guess, help out anybody who is to be in this hospital, to eventually find one room, spot, whichever, that is going to eventually help these people be safe while they go and they take out these zombies into one fell swoop of a room. and lock them in there. So eventually they go and hit this fire alarm to get these zombies to really go into this one specific room. But it seems that one of the zombies ends up getting his hand stuck in the door. So Mrs. French is just like, well, you guys all get out of here. I'm going to go and I'm going to burst this oxygen tank and I'm going to light it up and just like kill all these zombies because I'm going to die in 6 months anyways. And so I'm like, no, Miss French, come on. You could have made it a little longer. Like, you could have probably been, like, bitten by a zombie and then turned, and then we could have seen you from time to time as little cameos. No, come on, Miss French. But no, Mrs. French takes the hero ending, kills all these zombies, and huzzah for her. And so now all these people are running off to their hearse to eventually just be like, well, I guess this place isn't safe. So they are to just skedaddle out of here. So I think that's all that I had to say about this episode, because I'm going to get the heck out of here, because I think about roughly the time that I talked about this was about the length of the episode. So I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.